Friends, it is great to be together. I'm going to invite Jennifer and Wendy into the space as our facilitators and leaders today and to turn it over to them. Again, this is Brian Frederick Gray. I'm the mission director for Disciples Peace Fellowship, and today I am also tech support. So let's get this slideshow going. And Jennifer and Wendy, take it away.
So my name is Wendy Davidson. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. We're going to start with a virtual labyrinth walk. So Brian sent out something to everybody who's signed up via the email list with a little bit of information about labyrinths and with a couple of finger labyrinths that you can print out and trace through. If that is how you would like to participate in this opening labyrinth, I invite you to do that. But we are also going to be screen sharing a virtual labyrinth walk. So I invite you to take a deep breath and enter into a spirit of prayer. So what was that like for you? Have you ever done a labyrinth walk before? What did you notice as you were either working through your own finger labyrinth or watching the virtual walk? Feel free to unmute yourself or answer in the chat. What did you like or what did you not like?
I'll show a little bit of how much labyrinths mean to me. I really appreciate this very much. And had never done a virtual labyrinth like that. So thank you, Wendy and Jennifer, for finding that resource. We actually have a finger labyrinth in our house that's a wood cutout and carve out. It was a gift from a friend from her ordination, actually. Everyone who was a part of that service got one. And so I have found, especially in this time when getting outside is harder than it traditionally is, to be able to have ways of engaging in a prayer life that is still movement-based. A finger labyrinth has been really, really helpful for me. And something about the kinetic nature of watching the scene on the screen while also using my finger to trace through a very similar pattern was really powerful in a way that I wasn't quite ready for. So thank you for sharing that with us.
At General Assembly last year, disciples women from all over created finger labyrinths, both crocheting and knitting, that we passed out. So we had a lot of educational time at General Assembly explaining to people what they were.
Mine is on a bookshelf here in the office somewhere.
Oh, good.
I'm looking for it. If I can spot it, I'll grab that one and show it off too.
It's a good way to encourage that spiritual discipline.
Amen.
I was not expecting to get queasy, but I did. So I really liked being able to see the distance.
One of the perils of online, I'm afraid. Thank you, all of you, for sharing. We're going to go ahead and move on to an activity together. We are using an activity from Just Health Action. They put it together, and now we're going to share it with you. So we're going to explore how the benefits and burdens of a society, especially environmental benefits and burdens, are distributed across communities. And the premise is that I am going to be your villain for today. So I am the owner of a toxic waste management organization. All of you will be members of various communities in the area. We have some toxic waste that we have to assign to one of the communities. It has to be assigned to one community. We can't like split it up between several different communities. So as different communities, and then together we're going to have to figure out which community we are going to put our toxic waste. So Brian is going to be putting us all into breakout rooms, and there will be somebody in your breakout room who has some idea of what they're doing, so should be good. So you will get some statistics about some data about your community. I invite you to spend some time together talking about like what's the story of your community rather than just like what is this data. So what else is there, what is the story that you can tell about your community? We will be bringing you back together, at which point one or two of you can share the story of your community, and eventually like why or why not the toxic waste should be put at your community's space. Any questions before we break out? Okay. Ryan, whenever you're ready.
All right, if I did this correctly, I think everyone should be assigned breakout rooms.
So you want to go ahead and hit the join button. You should get a pop-up and you want to hit.
Did you do 4 or 5?
4. Hi, Wendy. Can you see or hear me?
Yes, I can.
There we are. Yeah, I was the only other one assigned to your room, so.
Oh, okay.
But I couldn't figure out right away how to assign myself because I don't show up in the drop-down list. I have to manually pick which room I go into. So.
Gotcha. Whenever I left the room, I was like, I'm surprised that nobody's here yet.
Yeah, when I think I hopped in right as you hopped out, so I went, oh no, like what if everyone is just sitting in their own rooms right now and like no one has the ability to communicate directly with me? We've created some sort of purgatory in the middle of our webinar.
I think we might be streaming live to Facebook, so
I do believe. Yep.
why don't we just, as the other member of the Toxic Waste Management Committee, how are we going to make our decisions?
So we have 3 communities that are going to be presenting to us.
We have 3 communities that are going to be presented.
Okay.
And I will go grab statistics.
Okay. And so each one of them is supposed to have somebody or somebodies who are going to make a case to us about are they going to be making the case for why they shouldn't be the one, or are they going to be making the case for why like someone else in particular should be?
That's a great question. I guess we'll see what they do.
Yeah, because that would weigh in on the decision. It's not just about, okay,
Yeah.
I don't want it to be in this community, but what does it mean when somebody else says, well, no, but make sure it goes here, and how does that weigh into the decision-making process?
Right. And we have some data on the 4 different communities.
Okay, yep, I see that here in the chat now.
So it's definitely an interesting question of, do we put it in the community that is best able to handle it, or do we put it in the community that won't say anything?
Sure. Absolutely.
Which one of those is the ethical decision and the other is the economic decision. I think we know what capitalism would say, but we can't.
Yeah, well, and so Wendy, help me with this exercise as well. Are you and I playing like the toxic waste company executives, or is it really like Wendy Davidson and Brian Frederick Gray who are getting to make this decision?
I think we're supposed to be the toxic waste management executive folks.
Yeah, I would think that. I would think you and I, as Wendy Davidson and Brian Frederick Gray, would come with potentially very
the ethical,
kind of biases and assumptions towards this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So suddenly the question of, okay, do you just make the economic decision, or do you make the political decision, which it could be different and separate from each other. That weighs differently and rings differently to me now.
Right.
Because yes, it's the moral consideration, the ethical consideration really could be quite separate from that. Do we want the place where we're going to make the most money, or do we want the place where we're going to get the least grief?
Right.
And again, those could end up being the same thing.
They could be.
So it's community 1, 2, and 3 that we're looking at. I have the spreadsheet up in front of me right now.
Community 1 has the lowest asthma hospitalization rate per 100,000.
Yeah.
And if we're putting toxic waste there,
yeah,
I worry about what the kids with asthma, how they would react if we were to put it in either of the other 2 communities. Both of those have really high rates.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially that second community. That's about as high as that number can go.
Yep. 161 versus 299 and 273.
Yeah.
Community 1 definitely has like the best environmental statistics at the moment. Like most tree canopy, most park space. But I suspect that they also have a lot of the money and power in the community.
Yep.
Like
that would
lowest poverty level.
Yes. Yeah, and some of those are really by significant margins as well. I mean, the poverty level is significantly lower than the other 2. The amount of tree coverage it's more than the other 2 combined.
Right. So community 1 seems like the best community, but are we willing to face the wrath of the community members in order to put the waste there? Yep.
Yeah, it will be interesting to hear what kind of their take is, what their pitch is.
Yeah.
I am assuming that they're not going to come out and go, yes, it should obviously be us.
It should be us.
You can see from our stats and our numbers, we can handle it. Something tells me that's not the way this decision goes.
Although that would make our decision easy if they
It
were
would,
to
yeah.
come
Well, and
back in.
especially, you know, as the one who was assigning the rooms as well. I'm trying to remember who's in that one. I know Raphael is leading the conversation. I think maybe Mary Jacobs is in there. Like they've got a group of folks that will be able to make a compelling case. Not to say that the other groups won't either, but in particular, you know, they've got some folks that I've been able to work with pretty closely over the years and know that they can make a really good case.
Well, so we've given them about 5 minutes. Can you send out like a 1 or 2 minute warning to folks?
I think so. Let's see if I can figure out how to make that happen. Okay, breakout rooms. Yes, I can broadcast a message to all. How long do you want to give them?
I mean, we've already had probably just 1 more minute.
Okay.
Seems fine.
This is your 60-second warning. Please wrap up your conversation and join us in the main room again. Okay, that has been broadcast.
Okay, great. One of the questions on our sheet is, where do you think it will be easiest to put the toxic waste with the least amount of opposition? It's definitely community 2 or community 3.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And just looking at the breakdown on the sheet, I would think community 2, possibly even more than 3. But we'll see. And maybe part of their pitch might help kind of illustrate or understand that too, if I'm really wrong with that assumption. Hi, Pat. Welcome back to the room.
We're back.
Welcome back. So what community were you a part of?
Number 1.
Number 1.
They were always on the far end of everything, so it was easy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I said. Yay, we got the easy one.
All right, I'm going to broadcast the message to everybody that I'm closing the rooms now. All right. And 3, 2, 1. Oh, well, we'll know this for the future as well. When I hit close breakout rooms, that's the 60-second warning.
Oh, oops.
So folks will have an additional minute to show up back here. We'll see who makes the most of that time. So Raphael, Pat, Susan, were you all group 1? Is that right?
Yes. Oh, cut me off.
So, well, and Wendy, we had talked earlier, would it be helpful for everyone to rename themselves and just stick the number of their group at the front of their name?
Yeah, that would be helpful. And Brian, if you just put TWM at the beginning of yours for toxic waste management.
Can do. So, and if folks are unsure how to do that, you hit the participants button and then you can undo or rename yourself.
Hello, welcome back.
Hi, everybody.
So
oh my, we're already back.
We are indeed. Okay,
I think
so
we should
we're
rename ourselves with the community that we're part of.
Right.
Bill, I lost it.
We didn't even get to picking our name.
Oh.
We can just do based on numbers.
So, okay, based on our community numbers. Okay, that's
So
Right.
So myself and Nancy and Tony, aka Marvin, are number 3. If you want to rename us.
Yep, can do. Chrissy, you said it was you, Nancy, and Marvin?
Yeah.
But Marvin is actually Tony.
Right.
Correct.
We didn't get to any of the questions, so I'd like to see the screen with the questions again, just so I know what they are.
What community were you a part of?
3.
Oh, yep, whoops.
I just dropped it in the chat link.
Yep,
Okay.
yep, I put people in the wrong community. That was my fault. I will fix that real quick. There we go.
And then Mary and John were with me in community too.
Okay.
So while Brian is finishing that up, did y'all pick somebody to represent you, or just like those goes? 1 or 2 people from each group. Go ahead and tell us about your community. Who are you? What do y'all like?
I'll start with community 1. We are the Green Hills. That's what we've named ourselves. Our community is mostly white with high income. Most of our residents have college degrees and are native-born Americans. Very low pollution, very little contamination, lots of green space, and primarily very healthy. And we believe that we would have a lot of influence in decision making.
Anyone else? Community 2, community 3. Either of y'all want to say anything?
You still addressing group 1?
I think group 1 has explained who they are.
Okay, so you want to go to group 2 or 3 then?
Whoever wants to speak up.
Well, I'm Tony, part of group 3, and we didn't make up a name for ourselves. I guess we just call it Pleasantville or something like that.
It's a great name, Tony.
But to answer the questions, going down the list, we are in the low to average range of percent non-white population at 29%. We're 40%. 40% of us are below the 200% poverty level, and that is very high. So there's a lot of poor people among us. And the college degrees, we're at the low end of that scale, 24%. foreign born, 15% that's fairly low, lower than average. Exposure to air pollution, 1.3, and that's kind of in the middle, close to average. Risk ranking for confirmed and suspected contaminated sites, 22, and that is quite low. Considering the other factors, I'm surprised that's so low. Amount of park area per resident, 125 square feet per resident, and that's near the low end of the scale as well. Amount of tree canopy percent, 19%, that's close to average. Heart disease death rate per 100,000 is at the low end of the range. So we're surprisingly we're pretty healthy.
Except for children.
Child asthma hospitalization rate per 100,000, 273, and that is high. We're near the top of that range.
Does anybody else have anything that they would like to add about their community? I'm not going to make you share if you don't want to. But...
Oh, and as far as decision-making power, I would say because we have fewer well-educated people and more poverty, I would say we would have relatively less decision-making power.
Okay. Anyone else want to add anything before we move on? Okay, so you have heard from the other communities. It's now time to figure out where we want the toxic waste to go. So your community gets one vote. Brian, do we still have the breakout rooms set up?
Yes, I think I can pull them back up and can rerun it the way that we were.
Now that you've heard from the different communities, we're going to send you into breakout rooms for just a couple of minutes. You don't have very long to figure out what community your community is going to vote for. So your community needs to decide who you're going to vote to receive the toxic waste.
Did anyone speak for group 2?
No, I don't think so, no.
Is there a reason for that?
Great question. Group 2, do you want to speak up at all? Well, work with the information you got.
Yeah, sorry. We're going to send you all to your rooms. We'll have you come back out
Tricksters.
with your vote.
Bye.
Brian, folks aren't in the right rooms.
Yep. Yeah. Let me close them all out again.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm back.
Yep. Sorry, we reassigned everyone to the wrong rooms.
Welcome back. It's an adventure.
Welcome back, everybody. Sorry about that. Recreating
That's all right.
the
I like
rooms,
to keep it
set you all
interesting.
in completely random rooms. So.
It'd be so much easier if I could just send you to corners instead of...
Right.
Exactly right. But since we've changed your names, I should be able to redo it one more time.
Some things are easier online and some things are much harder.
That's right.
Brian, I'm going to need a lesson on Zoom and live streaming to Facebook.
Yeah, that over the course of these 4 days, we have more or less figured out.
I've been trying, and each time I try on IRTF's page or FOR's page, I fail.
All right, we are going to try redoing these rooms one more time, friends. There we go. Okay, now let me reassign everyone. Thankfully, you all have numbers in front of you, so that will be a little bit easier this time. My apologies. I really thought I had hit the shortcut button that was going to do all of this, and then no, you all ended up in completely random places.
Also, be prepared not just to say who it is that you're voting for when you come back, but why it is that you're making the decision that you're making.
All right, thank you all. Let's try this one more time.
All right.
I think we're actually in our own room this time.
Hello.
Yeah.
We are.
Cool.
It was like breakout room 6. I was like, I'm okay.
Yeah.
So I trust you.
It recreated 1 and 2 and just randomly sent people to them. So I had to delete both of them and then
Gotcha. And add new ones at the end. Okay. Gotta,
so Chrissy figured it out immediately. Wait a minute, they didn't get to talk. Somebody let them talk. It's like, no, go to your rooms, go to your rooms. So, but will be interesting to see, like, if even that little piece of dynamic changes.
Point it out to people.
Yep. So I presume we get to vote as well.
I think we get to decide.
Okay.
Like, we take their votes into account, but I think we get to just
pick,
decide.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm fascinated that Community 3 has the added detail of being surprisingly healthy, except for asthma. And so, like, we know that, okay, yep, poverty level, lots of poor that are there, low end of college degrees, but there are people with asthma. So we can feel good about ourselves saying, well, we kept the people that have asthma from being the ones that got, the waste management, the toxic waste. And so we can feel good about not doing that. But Community 1, boy, that Community 1, I mean, they even said they're highly influential. Like, Pat made sure to drop that phrase right at the very end. And so
I feel like we almost have to go with whoever it is that Community 1 votes for. Like, as
that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way. But
as
yeah, you
company?
probably are right. Yeah, it's not just we don't get it, but it's who we want to get it gets it. That's fascinating. So, and that also diffuses the responsibility for us too, right? Like, the moral hazard is suddenly lessened. That, oh yeah,
Right.
it was, we didn't really even make the decision. We listened to the community, and the most influential people told us. And,
right, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds right. Should we hop out and tell everyone else to be ready to come back?
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, close this one. Okay, let me send a message to everybody. All right. And this time I know when I hit close rooms, they have exactly 60 seconds. So.
Whoop, back early.
Look at group number 1 coming right in.
That
Highly
is so
influential group jumping back in before everybody else.
Right. We're going to have our way.
We got back first. We get to go ahead and say it first.
And everybody else has to go along with us.
Oh, shoot.
Mm-mm. So Pat, Susan, I'm curious, breaking character just for a second. Have either of you ever done this scenario, this game?
No.
No.
It's really good though, because all those factors that obviously need to be considered when you make these kind of decisions, I normally wouldn't pay attention to.
Exactly.
Because I don't have to. Somebody decides for me.
Yeah, isn't that something? Yeah. Yeah, this is the
Problem
first time.
there.
First time
And
I've
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Susan. Yeah.
Well, I was going to break even further from that and ask you, Brian, if anyone has ever told you how much you look like Ben Platt. Is that the right? Is it just the angle of the computer?
Possibly, yeah. Profile.
No, I swear you look so much like him.
Well, yeah, now you're making me blush. So
there you go.
Well, start to sing and we'll know.
Okay, so we need about one person from each group to tell us who y'all are voting for to receive the toxic waste and why you're voting.
Okay, I will speak for Green Hills again. We decided that if I were the community leader, I'd get voted out of office, but we have the most green space. We have lots of space, we have little contamination, and it seems that if we're going to do what makes sense, that Green Hills should be the place for the contamination to go, because we have enough green space that we could put it off away from folks.
Thank you, Green Hills. We have a representative from community number 2 or a representative from Pleasantville.
And I'm Tony Drake from Pleasantville. Yes, we were just wondering why Group 2 didn't give us any information about their the makeup of their community. So by in one sense, by their not being there to represent themselves, we're considering designating Group 2 as the part of the community where the incinerator should go. But
However, we came to a consensus that we would prefer it to not be in any place in our community, and that was going to be the fight that we led with. So we would rather not make a decision. We want it because we were really torn between whether or not Village 2 was, whether they had too much power and they were just playing puppet strings with us and like not giving us information intentionally, or whether they were like denied their voice and their seat at the table, and we wouldn't want to put it on them if that were the case, if they were left out intentionally.
Yeah, all good things to consider.
Here, here.
So are y'all abstaining or do y'all have a...
We're abstaining.
Okay.
Hello?
Group
Yes,
2,
right now. Okay. Who's
do y'all
calling?
have any decisions
I'm
that
in a
you'd like to
meeting
make?
right now, Zoom meeting. Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. All right.
Wendy and I are sending messages in the chat.
As your toxic waste management executives, we are making the final decision based on community input. I think we have to go with community one. I mean, it is the logical choice, and if community one is willing to have the waste in that space, then we'll go with that. Although Chrissy makes an excellent point, it would be great if we could just not put it anywhere in the community at all.
Yeah, we tried to go with that too.
Yeah. Dealing with the constraints of the activity itself.
But like something about power and responsibility, like, because I appreciate you, Pat, and Community One, doing not what I see happen in real life, which is acknowledging your privilege.
We talked about that in group one.
Okay, so just continuing to reflect on everything that happened, what do you think why don't we go ahead and open it up to group two? Jennifer, does that make sense?
Jennifer, I just want to remind group one that is contaminated waste, so you will be dying soon. But thank you for saving us. So
yeah, Jennifer, do you want to let us know what was going on there with community two?
Yeah, so about community two is we were the biggest minority population, so 71% identified as non-white. We had a pretty high poverty level of 32%. 72% of us didn't have college degrees. And we had the biggest foreign-born population. So in a way, us not having a voice also kind of is like, you know, we're speaking a language that you may not understand. And we have the highest pollution rate. We were at 2.3%. We did have a good amount of park area compared to everyone else. We were at 454, so we were the second highest after community one. But we had the lowest tree canopy. So gotta take that as it is. We had some amount of death rates, but really where our health really came from is that we had the highest rate of children with asthma hospitalization. So having the toxic there would have just really expedited and increased that number. And we care about our children.
So
we really thought we were going to get it.
Yeah. So other members of group two, what was it like to not be able to speak up during the meetings? Like Jennifer knew going into this that this was going to be the case, but for those of you who didn't, what was that like?
Well, it was really hard not to even say anything about who we were. You know, that's and I've seen settings where people are in a meeting and they may speak up, but they are so discounted, their voices are basically not present. So, yeah, but it was really hard not to be able to say, please don't give it to us.
We're so used to having our own way, we figured even if we got it, we'd be able to take care of it.
Can you think of any situations in real life where people might not be able to speak up, or might not be heard if they do speak up?
Oh yeah.
What are some of those
Every
situations?
every community in Cleveland that has a landfill or that has really high rates of lead paint in rental units. The majority of the city does not own their home, or places that have higher infant mortality. All of those things are predominantly very low income. And I'm speaking specifically about Cleveland right now, predominantly Afro-descendant or migrant. And so what we've seen in organizing in these communities, particularly in areas with public housing, has just been like how much more people we need to get to turn out for there to be any change. Whereas like in a community like Community 1, you know, Pat can just say as the representative, this is what we are willing to do. Whereas like in Community 2, it's just like you need so much more of a splash to really be heard. And I see that all the time in my organizing, like all the time. Think about, we had a People's Convention for Peace and Justice while the RNC was in town in 2016. We've had truth commissions on poverty with the Poor People's Campaign, truth commissions on the things that I mentioned, infant mortality, and you know, and we have this, I live in this city where we have this infamous nickname of being the mistake on the lake, or because of the burning river. And for those of you who don't know much about Cleveland, we had the first Afro-descendant mayor of a major metropolitan city, and that was Carl Stokes. And Cleveland's burning river was definitely not the only river or lake in the U.S. that was catching on fire during the 60s and 70s. And part of the reason why we got this nickname is because our Black mayor was willing to draw some stink about it so that the EPA, you know, could be built, and so that it could help clean up this situation. So actually that was a form of racism, really, for big business to shun Cleveland businesses because of who was in power at that time. And I think that is just so wild, just this like legacy of protecting profits over people and over the land and all of that. Oh my gosh, this is such a good exercise.
Thank you.
Being able, go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh no, you can go, because I was going to move on a little bit. But
I was just going to say, just even on a daily basis, as a woman, as a female, being in meetings, often whatever, sometimes what I say is then mansplained, but then when it's mansplained, it's not what I said. It's said in a different way, or sometimes offer suggestions or ideas that are not heard, but later if a male says it, suddenly it's a great idea.
Well, yes, I've seen that in many cases. I am an advocate for, I've always been an advocate, maybe not outspoken enough about it, but for women getting more leadership roles in all sorts of situations. I spent some time in Nigeria a few years ago doing it on a research project, and that's a very patriarchal society. That is that the men make the decisions. But surprisingly enough, there are a few women that I met there and got to know a little bit who got good educations, and they did move into some positions where they had some clout and influence. It's not easy, but it shows it can be done. And women have a hard time climbing up that corporate ladder because there's so many men there that feel like that they don't really deserve to be there.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that Green America said. So in Green America stated that the first duty of those with privilege is to listen. The second is to try to truly understand what others are saying before responding. And they go on to say, we all have privilege and we all have disadvantages. Our unique set of each shape of a particular worldview. But this is not a ladder of privilege. Rather, it is best to think of privilege as a set of lenses through which the world sees us and through which we see the world. And having one lens does not preclude or prevent from having another. So we must use our disadvantages to understand and empathize with the disadvantages of others and redirect our privilege to amplify those without voices. Those of us with the most privilege have a duty to work harder to raise others up because we are the ones with the resources to do so. Our role is not to co-opt their voices, but to hear them, understand them, amplify them, and find ways to work together to create the change in the world we wish to see. Only then, when everyone's voice is heard and understood, will we be able to create a society that sustains and nourishes all.
It starts with listening. First, we have to listen to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Just educate ourselves because no one knows everything about everything. If we just stick to what we know and what we think is right, and don't listen to other people, then we're just fooling ourselves. We have a false sense of superiority or whatever. So those the people who listen and take into account where other people are coming from and try to understand them, they're the ones that are that become in a better position to make decisions, to make intelligent decisions, or give healthy input toward this health decision making. I think consensus building is a tool that can be utilized in that way to get. If you have a group of people, a diverse group of people, say 12 people, and some of them are better educated than others, some have more can express themselves better than others. But if you give each of those people an equal chance to participate in a consensus group session and have a chance to speak their mind with everybody else expected to listen to them and take note of what they're saying, then the outcome of an exercise like that can be very valuable. I use that tool in Nigeria and some of the working with Muslims and groups of Muslims and Christians to and considering topics that were very important to each of them.
Yes. Well, Brian, thank you. So there's a video that I just wanted to show you all. So environmental justice is something that's really big for me. Being from New Orleans, I have been to multiple marches on it, but also becoming knowledgeable on it. As I was telling my cohort people earlier, there was this article that started and it says, with so much irony, what the EPA did was release that Black Americans are more likely to experience environmental racism. So I wanted to share a little bit of that and a little bit of the statistics with you all today. If you can please mute yourselves, that'd be great.
Plaquemines Parish is an incredible place. You can tell that the communities that are there have been there for a long time. You can also tell that the industry that's been there has had a huge impact on these communities and the way that they live their daily lives. I've never seen a place in the United States where you can so clearly see the intersection of pollution, environmental injustice, and climate change. So last summer I joined Senator Cory Booker, the U.S. Human Rights Network, and 350.org on a trip to the Deep South to meet people in some of these affected communities.
This is a civil rights issue. Please understand, this is a civil rights issue.
At the Greater Morning Star Church, we heard from parish residents, including Lyric Turner, one of the young members of the Zion Travelers Cooperative Center. Lyric had recently taken a flyover of the parish to see the land lost for herself.
I plan on coming back, probably 30 years from now, having my kids come see their grandmother, their grandfather, their auntie, their uncle, wherever it is, coming back down here. But if nothing is done for us, they can't come back to anything.
The communities I visited in Plaquemines Parish that were dealing with heavy industry and sea level rise the most were Black or brown. And really, that's no coincidence. It's not uncommon for Black and brown communities to be targeted for industry, landfills, coal mines, pipelines, you name it. This is happening all across the country, not just in Louisiana. Of the 9 million people living near a hazardous waste site, 56% are people of color. And Black Americans are 3 times as likely to die from air pollution. These stats are evidence of what the larger movement would call environmental injustice or environmental racism. It's no accident that these communities have industry in their backyard. This is the outcome of decades of public policy and decisions made by people in power. Between Baton Rouge and New Orleans along the Mississippi River lie some of the highest concentrations of industrial plants in the country. The impact of these industries on the surrounding communities are the reason this part of Louisiana is called Cancer Alley. In St. James Parish, residents have watched their once thriving community transform into an industrial zone. Over the years, 15 large-scale industrial plants have moved into the area. Residents say it's because of the impact of these industries that there's such a high rate of cancer in the region.
I'm a resident here of Chapman Town, going on 64 years. I worked in industry for 25 years. I've lived around here 64 years and saw everything to change. 3 months ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
This community has been facing industry in their area for generations, but they're fighting back. Pastor Harry Joseph, the man who runs the church that we visited in St. James, has already filed a lawsuit against companies planning more pipelines and more industry in the area.
And I declare that if God is pleased, He's going to take us to do it. And we got to fight for what God has given us, and that's our lives.
Another stop we made on our tour of the Deep South was in Africatown, a small community in Plateau, Alabama. You might have heard of Africatown. It's the home of the last known slave ship to dock in America, nearly 50 years after slavery was abolished. Africatown and Plateau were also the home to the International Paper Company in the 40s and 50s, which provided family-sustaining jobs to all of the communities that lived in the area. For years, the paper company pumped pollution into the air and water of this community, and now we're seeing the long-lasting effect of that pollution on the families that are still there in Africatown.
I have lived in this area most of my life. It was 7 siblings. In my family, there was never a history of cancer, respiratory problems. However, 5 of my siblings have died. And of the 5 that died, 4 of them died with cancer. There are 2 surviving, my brother and myself. I am a twice survivor of cancer. It should not be where parents bury children. Children bury parents.
Residents of Africatown have already filed a lawsuit against the International Paper Company. The paper company says they didn't do anything wrong, but community members and community leaders like Major Joe Womack say that something has to be done to hold this company accountable. People in cities like Africatown, St. James, Plaquemines Parish, they're up against a whole lot more than industry. They live in conservative states. They have representatives that don't care about them. Oftentimes they're poor or they live in rural areas. But they're still organized. They're fighting every day. They're filing lawsuits. They're showing up to meetings. They're door knocking. And they're voting for people who they feel will make their communities more resilient. Environmental justice has turned into a big talking point in the climate community, but when it comes to funding organizations working on the issue, they are often overlooked and these communities are sometimes underserved. In a broader sense, organizations working to curb global warming forget to include environmental justice in their policy proposals or their larger campaign initiatives. But in reality, focusing on environmental justice could be how we right some of the wrongs done to Black and brown communities and stop the climate crisis.
Thank you. So while Brian pulls up the next video, what's happening in Louisiana is happening all over. We know about Flint. It's actually happening in Massachusetts as well. Teaching Tolerance did a study and found that poor non-white communities are usually the ones with the environmental issues. And what always gets me and it frustrates me is I know for New Orleans, there's a place called Agricultural Landfill, and in the 1980s, New Orleans, the government pushed Black Americans to live here. Oh, you can be homeowners. Just, live on this place that used to be a toxic landfill. And years later, they have found over 150 pollutants in the water and air, 50 of which are known carcinogens. And they're like, oh, we didn't do anything wrong, right? You live there, you picked that place. And so a lot of people just feel like, the government is just waiting for us to die. Society is just waiting for us to die, and they're not doing anything about it. And the thing about it is, the transition of landfills to landmarks and to residential towns is easy. It takes a little bit more work, yes, but when you do it, the impact lasts longer. And I was able to actually visit a place that did it right. And so that's called Mount Trashmore, which is located in Virginia Beach. And it is a gorgeous site. So we would have played for it. So the work can be done. And we want to leave you all with some pretty good action steps. And so one of the first action steps I'm going to let Wendy talk about a little bit.
So Green Chalice is the Disciples of Christ Eco Care and Eco Justice Ministry. They're very dedicated to the environment, and especially in recent years, have tried to make more efforts towards addressing the intersectional aspects of eco-care. So this is their covenant. It says that as children of God and followers of Christ Jesus, we covenant to worship God with all creation and pray for the healing of the earth, study the climate crisis and engage others in climate solutions, repent and forgive for the harm we have inflicted on the earth that sustains life, advocate for eco-justice public policies and witness by living sustainable lifestyles, and rest in God's good creation and invite others to delight in nature. And if these are things that you are willing to at least try to commit to, just do your best. I invite you to go ahead and write your name in the chat. And then if you would don't actually put your email, but just put email in parentheses after that. And if you do that, then we can hook you up with Green Chalice just so that you can get regular updates from them about how to stay involved with the ever-changing and ever-evolving set of justice opportunities that they have to care for the environment and care for all of the creatures who live in it. And so that just about wraps us up, not quite. I'm going to pass it back to Jennifer one last time, and then we'll say our goodbyes.
So on behalf of Wendy, myself, and all of the DPF team, we want to thank you all for joining us today for this equal justice conversation. And we just want to remind you that this is not the end. It does not have to be bad, right? These conditions are the result of decades of indifference from people with power. But the thing about it is, as Christians, as God's children, we have so much power and we can make a difference. So we just ask that you continue to share your voice, continue to do good, vote. Right now, that's kind of the biggest thing, is there's a lot of policies out there. Vote for the policies, vote for the people who are going to make those changes. And we just want to thank you for all the work that you already are doing and for the work that you will continue to do.
Thank you for your leadership today.
Thank you. Yes, and please join us. Tomorrow is our last day. Sadly, it's not sad. We're so glad. But we're ending with a bang. So tomorrow we'll be partnering with Pro Reconciliation Ministries with April Johnson as our official launch of our reconciliation, anti-oppression Bible study activity. And so hopefully we will see all of your beautiful faces there tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern.
For folks who might be hearing about that for the first time, this summer the Peace Interns have been partnered with April Johnson from Reconciliation Ministries for the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. She literally gave them free reign Anything you all want to create as an anti-oppression Bible study, I am here to support you and make it happen. And our Peace Interns said, what if we made a choose your own adventure online story that people could go through? It is remarkable. I am so proud of them. I'm so grateful to April for the opportunity and for the amount of time and energy that all of them have put into it. You'll get to hear some of the background story tomorrow. You'll get to see the resource, and we think we've even figured out a way for the entire group to be able to walk through at least one permutation of it as well. You'll then have the chance to do some of the follow-up conversation afterwards. And since this is still being play tested and beta tested right now, you could help with any hiccups that we might find too. I don't think there are going to be any hiccups. I think we got all of our hiccups out today. But tomorrow we will gather again. April will be with us for that session. I hope you all will be too. And when you get the email from me with the Zoom link information in it for tomorrow, please feel free to share that as widely as you would like to with anyone in your community that you would like to, so that we can continue to get the word out, especially about this resource that I think a lot of folks are going to be excited to receive and be able to put to use.
If I could just jump in there for a second, we really designed this as a tool to be used by individuals and communities in churches. So youth groups, Sunday school classes, all of those kinds of things. So if this is something that you think you might be able to take back to your church, we would love for that to happen. So tomorrow is a really great place to get introduced. But yes, there will also be a recording available for tomorrow.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. We hope to see you tomorrow. Otherwise, we hope you can watch the recordings later on. Really grateful to have you all here with us today. Peace be with you.
This has been a great series. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Nancy. Blessings to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, John. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks, thanks for everything you're doing. This is good.
Oh, amen. Blessings upon you.